All right. So, what do I call this segment? I don't know, but I've been noticing this thing on Facebook where people will talk about, when they bring up Harry Potter or they bring up Lord of the Rings, those two specifically, who is the one who does most of the heavy lifting, right? So a lot of times Harry Potter, people say Hermione does all the heavy lifting, and I will say this, right? Yeah, both of these two are books and movies. I'm going to be talking about just the movies because in some cases, especially Harry Potter, I can't speak to the books. So in Harry Potter, they say Hermione is the one who does all the work. She knows all the spells. She's better at the spells. She's smarter. She has all the plans. What is Harry Potter? He's just the chosen one. And then Lord of the Rings, who is Frodo? Frodo's just the guy who he just carries a ring, and he's a little bit of a butt about it, right? He's always complaining. He's struggling. He even gives in to the power of the ring at the end of the movie. What does Sam do? Sam is always there. He's by Frodo's side all the time, except when he's not. But even when he's not, he comes back with a fury and he saves Frodo. All of these points have some semblance of merit, okay? I'm not going to just completely discredit it. However, I think there's some blaspheming going on right here, okay? Frodo is very important to the story, and I feel like it shouldn't need to be said. I feel like it's super obvious what he did for the story. I think what's going on is, people are just, I don't know, maybe they're trying to be different. They're trying to read into the story and be like, okay, so this is the obvious answer, but like, what's the high honor roll, those super smart kids who are trying to overthink everything. That was funny story, unrelated. That was my thing with the SAT that I thought was very funny, was when I was in SAT prep in high school, I was with all these other kids who were in like higher levels of math than me, and it was kind of funny sometimes because they'd come to me and like, I'm not in any way smart with math, especially, but the way I did math was so much simpler than them because they were doing like trigonometry and calculus and all this stuff, and I was over here like, okay, so I just took algebra, so this is this and blah blah blah, and they'd be like going at it from a trigonometry kind of mindset, and they'd be like, I don't understand this. There's too many variables. I'm like, oh well, no, there's not. There's two numbers, and you just do this and this, and be like, whoa. So like, I think in this instance, there are some people that are trying to overthink it a little bit. Everyone in these stories has a purpose, and without them, the story would fall apart. And I think that's a show of, hey, these stories were well crafted. Because if you have a character who's meaningless, then that's on the author, that's on the director, the creator. And they failed in some way in the story because everything's supposed to have meaning, or else why is it there? Hermione is that smart one who's there to kind of help them out whenever they can't think of what to do. I think Ron is kind of a stabling force for the trio, right? He, like, nobody's saying like, hey, especially in the movies, that he's like the guy who's super smart. But he's the one who kind of helps build that team atmosphere. I don't think with Harry and Hermione, I don't think there would be that level of relationship without Ron. So that's what I would say he brings to the trio in the movies. And then Harry is Harry. Like, to say that Hermione is more important than Harry, I really think you gotta admit it's a little just like you're just overthinking it a little bit. Harry Potter is the chosen one. Harry Potter can fight Voldemort. Hermione could not fight Voldemort. Like, it wouldn't work. Like, you could say, oh, well, it's only because of circumstances, and if the circumstances were the same, then Hermione would be able to beat Voldemort. But, like, obviously, but like, this is the story. So within the context of the story, Harry is the important one. Without Harry, everybody would die or become enslaved. I don't really remember what Voldemort's whole plan was. Does he ever like talk about that? Like maybe in the books or something? Like, I know he wants to like kill the Mudbloods or whatever and like enslave the non-magic folk. Is that the plan? And how is he going to do it? I'm just thinking about this now. Is Voldemort supposed to be like Hitler? Like, he's supposed to be like the magical Hitler? Anyone who knows Harry Potter, please answer that, because that's a thought that just came to my head, and I'm like, that's kind of crazy, actually. So maybe like, because nobody really knows what Hitler would have done because he didn't win. So maybe it's the same case. Like nobody really knows how Voldemort would have done it because he wasn't successful, and the person he's based on wasn't successful either. But back to the point, Harry Potter is clearly the most important of the trio because he is the only one who's able to face the Dark Lord. And I think in terms of power level, right, you have to say that, like, yes, Hermione knows a lot of spells and she's really well versed in them, but the experiences that Harry has come across are way different from Hermione. Like, you get to the Order of the Phoenix, right, and Harry really steps up, and you're like, without Hermione takes a secondary role in that. And I don't think she usually does that. She usually is the one who takes the first step. But in Order of the Phoenix, Harry is the one who's in charge, and because he knows how to train people and what to train them for and all that. Harry's the guy. I don't think this should be disputed. I don't think it's not discrediting Hermione or Ron, but like there is no story without Harry. And then looking at Lord of the Rings, right? So again, another great author in J.R.R. Tolkien, but Frodo is clearly the guy. Like, Aragorn as Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf, they have their own separate story. The real crux of this tale is Sam and Frodo and their journey to take the ring from Hobbiton and throw it into the fires of Mount Doom. So at least people are honing in on the fact that, hey, it's Sam and Frodo, their journey is the most important. But even in elementary school, I'd have to kind of like debate this with people because there's a thing that I guess on the surface level, Frodo looks kind of weak throughout the whole movie, right? Because all three movies, because he's just carrying a ring. And we as viewers, especially, I was debating these people in freaking like third grade, so this is in like elementary school. You're looking at that as a kid and you're like, okay, well, he's just carrying a ring. It can't be that bad. Frodo is enduring. Frodo is going through this immense struggle that no one else wants, right? Like, think about this. He offered it to Gandalf. Gandalf said no. He offered it to Galadriel. Galadriel said no. So these two immensely powerful individuals refused to take on this quest, but Frodo did it. And he was successful. Like even if he gave in at the end, he was successful. The amount of time that he had that ring and he resisted it for that long is way more impressive than taking down an Oliphant with Legolas or defending Helm's Deep or fighting Shelob. Like, he is fighting the literal definition of temptation and winning. And even with Sam, like when Sam has the ring in his possession for a couple minutes or hours, however you want to say it. Yeah, for a little bit of time he has the ring. And even in that small amount of time, he feels the pull of the ring and kind of gives into it, right? Cuz if you remember when he saves Frodo from the tower and like, all these orcs that kind of are fighting over him and all that stuff. And Sam comes up and Frodo's like, where's the ring? And Sam's like, I have it right here. And he holds it out in front of him and he kind of gets entranced by it. And he stares at it before Frodo snatches it out of his hand. I think it's a really cool thing that they did by showing the weight of the ring, right? So it's not just a metaphorical weight, but it's a literal weight. Like it's scarring Frodo's neck because it's just so heavy. And so it's not just a mental burden, but physical as well, where he can't even, it's hard to walk. His thoughts are constantly being bombarded. Sam is a great character, right? We all want to be Sam, but we want to be Sam because we can't be Frodo. And I think that's a thing that very few people think about, where it's just like, yes, Sam's a great friend. You want friends like Sam who are there, who are willing to fight for you, even when you screw up. Even at the end of the movie, when Frodo gives in, Sam's heartbroken because, that's his friend. And even in giving into temptation, he's just like, he's still my friend, and I'm just heartbroken. To be Frodo, you have to be able to take on that pain, that journey, that temptation, all of it, and win. And yes, does Frodo give in at the end? Heck yeah, he does. I don't think there's any doubt. If Gollum hadn't bitten off the finger, Frodo would have become Gollum. But that's not how it went, right? That's not the story. So Frodo is the guy. And I don't think anyone else could have been Frodo. Therefore, he is the most important. So, that's all I have to say. Frodo, Harry Potter, let's stop talking trash about these two characters. They are the most important in their franchises. Not discrediting any of the other characters, but those are the two mains.